as a custom, before I give a message, I always read you some poetry because that's one of my hobbies. So this particular poem is by an author who is unknown. It's called My Daily Creed. Let me be a little kinder. Let me be a little blinder. Let the faults of those about me, let me praise a little more. Let me be, when I am weary, just a little bit more cheery. Let me serve a little better those that I am striving for. Let me be a little braver. When temptation bids me waver, let me strive a little harder. To all that should be, let me be a little meeker with my brothers that are weaker. Let me think more of my neighbor and a little less of me. So this morning's sermon comes from Luke chapter 22, verses 39 through 46. However, the focus really is on verses 42, where it says, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me, yet not my will, but your will be done. And this is is this what I signed up for? That's the title. Jesus knew what he signed up for when his Father asked him to be the Savior of the world. However, the human side of Jesus asked the question, is this what I signed up for? When it was time and he knew all that he was going through and going to take place, he asked, Father, remove this cup from me. But in the next breath, he said, not my will, but thy will be done. We know that his cup was heavy and his burdens were full. But he even asked for it to be removed. But then he said in the next breath, again, not my will, but thy will be done. Because he knew the consequences of his action. So as I stand before you today, I ask the same question. Is this what I signed up for? When I married Pastor Sheila over 30 years ago, if I am to be honest, the answer would be no. But not my will, thy will be done. The fact that we love each other is a great thing. However, it is God's will that gets us through. So when I talk about this thing about, is this what I signed up for? This is a personal question that we all have to ask ourselves, and we have to answer it honestly. Is this what I signed up for? And then when you ask the question, you have to be willing to surrender your will to God's will. And we can't be caught sleeping like the disciples. And you might say, well, how are we sleeping today? We are not in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus is not kneeling, praying, and droplets of blood is falling, sweat is falling from him like droplets of blood. But are we really doing everything we can do as Christians and as followers of Christ to help man, to help children, to help the people do the things in this life that need them to guide them to God's wonderful light? So when we ask the question, is this what I signed up for? Can we honestly say yes? Again, 30 years ago, if you'd asked me that question, I can be honest with you, the answer would have been no, because there's no way I would have planned to be standing up before you on Sunday morning giving a message. There's no way I would have moved to Pittsfield in all the snow. And there's no way I would have given up all the things that I had to give up to come here. But I can tell you that at this point in my life, I can honestly say, not my will, but thy will be done. So I'm going to give you 3 things that I gleaned from this passage. The first is we have to pray all the time so God can take hold in our life. So we can say with non-certainty, not my will, but thy will be done. 2, we have to surrender our will to his will, even if he asks us, even if we ask him to remove the cup, we have to be willing to say, not my will, but thy will be done. And 3rd, we can't be caught sleeping. And the sleeping part is a metaphor. The disciples was at a crossroad. They was in a place where they was about to see the Savior of the world be crucified. And God was telling them, you need to be praying so that when I leave here, you will understand and you won't fall into temptation. That's what it means when he's telling them, get up, pray, that you may not come into the time of trial. The time of trial is not some courthouse. The time of trial is not some prosecutor that's trying to convict them of a crime. The time of trial is so that they don't fall into temptation, so that Peter, who should have been praying, but he was sleeping when it was time, when the people asked him if he was a follower of Jesus, said if he had been praying earnestly the way he should have been praying, he wouldn't have fell into the trap and denied Jesus 3 times. Judah wouldn't have fell into the trap of betraying Jesus if he would have been praying the way he was supposed to be praying. The other disciples would not have been doing the things that they was supposed to be doing had they not been sleeping. They would have not fallen into the trap of temptation. So God was telling them, get up and pray, just like he's telling us, get up and pray. Pray in season and out of season so that you don't fall into this trap of temptation. And there are all kinds of temptations out there in the world. We know some of them. As a male, we know some of them, they got nice haircut, and they're pretty, and they walk in the sachet in front of you, and you fall for the temptation. And women, you know, you look for that guy who's ripped and buff, you know, with the big muscles, and you fall into the temptation. The children fall into the temptation of telling their parents that they're not going to use their cell phone when it's time to go to bed, but as soon as they turn out the light, they're under the cover texting and doing all the things that they're supposed to do. They don't go to class the way they're supposed to do. They say, well, you know, Miss Smith taught that lesson yesterday, so I don't have to go to class today. So God is telling us, don't get caught sleeping. Pray in season and out of season so that you don't get caught in this trap of temptation. Now, I know that the people here at First Baptist don't get caught in temptation, you know. This is a great place, you know, we all do all the things that we're supposed to do and all that stuff. But Jesus was telling the disciples, just as he's telling us today, don't get caught sleeping. Because we have to move on and we have to do the thing that Jesus said. So Jesus asks, pray always. We don't give into temptation. Just as I asked the disciples to pray because he knew the temptations that was coming. He knew that the time was near. He knew that he had to give his life to save this world. But again, the human side of Jesus was saying, you know, Father, you asked me to come down here and save these people, and they can't even stay up and pray. So you know he had to be asking the question, is this what I signed up for? You know he had to be saying, are these the people that you want me to sacrifice my life for, that you want me to go through this beating for, that you want me to carry the sins of the world for, and they can't even stay up and pray? But the divine side of Jesus said, not my will, but thy will be done. So we have to stay in the divine side of God where we are always praying so we can always answer the question, not my will, but thy will be done. Because Jesus was thinking, if these disciples who are sleeping now, if they see me die, what are they going to think? Are they going to think that, am I the true Messiah? You know, how could they kill someone who said that he is going to be with us eternally? He was going to be with us always. And besides, fellas, we were sleeping because it was the women who went to the tomb to anoint Jesus and take care of him. So maybe the women might have been a little more awake than the men. But we have to ask ourselves, are we committed to the work of God? Are we committed to do the things that we're supposed to do? And God didn't say that we could not express ourselves to him in an open and true manner. So it's okay to express your feelings. It's okay to tell God, I don't know if I can do that. Because then he'll give you the strength to say, not your will, but my will be done. And we cannot be caught sleeping. We have to pray always. We have to pray in season. We have to pray out of season. We have to stay on our knees. Now I understand what my grandmother used to say when she said she had callus on her knees. I realized she had callus on her knees not because she was scrubbing the floor for wax and all that stuff. She had callus on her knees because she was praying for me and my cousins and my sisters and my brothers and all the people in our family. And so she had worn her knees out. At that time, they wasn't doing these knee replacement things where people actually get to wear their knee out praying, and then they can get a new knee, and then they can get down and pray some more. So, she had callus on her knees, not because she was working hard, but simply because she was always on her knees praying, asking God so that she could say, nevertheless, Father, not my will, but thy will be done. So, you know, when I talk about this thing, is this what I signed up for? You know, I thought about this and this came to me because 30 years ago when Sheila and I got married, you know, the first 6 months of our marriage, her mother became really ill. And I was a young person then, and so she was at the hospital both day and night. And I had to ask myself, is this what I signed up for? But then the answer was, you know, Nelson, you really don't want a wife who wouldn't take the time to take care of ailing parents. Because guess what? If you get sick and she's not taking care of mom, she's probably not going to take care of you. So then I could say, not my will, but thy will be done. And then we got the business going, and everything was looking well in New Orleans, and the salon was real successful. And then all of a sudden, she got a call to go to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And so then she said, babe, I know everything is well with the shop, but this is a really great opportunity for me. So guess what? We packed up everything again, and we moved to North Carolina. And I'm really asking myself the question now, is this what I signed up for? Because, you know, I got my business going well, everybody happy, I'm close to my family, I can do the things I need to do. And so we moved to North Carolina and we started all over again. But the Lord was good because he actually blessed me with even more customers in North Carolina. And then sometimes she'll tell a story about how many clients I had in North Carolina, and sometimes I just kind of put my head down because I said, why is she telling people that? But then for this sermon, in order to be honest, I actually went back in the books and I did some math, and she shortchanged it was actually more than what she'd been saying. So we moved to North Carolina. Everything was well. And then about 5 years ago, she came. Well, it was before that, but she said, I think the God is calling me to go to seminary. So I said, okay, well, if you want to go to seminary, that's fine. I support you. But I thought we was going to actually stay in North Carolina, because probably if I'd have known we were going to end up in Pittsfield, I probably would have said, are you sure you want to go to seminary? So she went to seminary, and she graduated from seminary and all that stuff. And then she kind of sent out some resumes. I always teased her that she said she was rejected more times than she was actually rejected. We really don't know the real number. But then she received a letter from First Baptist Church, from Stu Skates and the search committee, about becoming the senior pastor of First Baptist Church. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, Pittsfield, I never even heard of Pittsfield. And so, and they probably be just like everybody else. I can still live in North Carolina. I can have my business and everything will be good. And all of a sudden, Stu decided to call her and invite her over here for to come to Pittsfield. So I'm at home, the phone rang. She said, this is home. I'm like, are you really, this is home? Because 2 weeks prior to that, we actually gone to New Orleans, because there was a church in New Orleans that was actually looking at her. So 2 weeks from that, we'd gone to New Orleans. So then she come tell me about some place called Pittsfield. It feel like home. And I'm thinking, of course, you know the story. We packed up everything. We moved to Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And so I'm really asking myself now, is this what I signed up for? Is this what I signed up for? But I can truly tell you that through this experience, I have come to understand that it's not my will, but it's God's will be done in our life. And I must admit, with the help of some really nice people in Pittsfield, we have had a wonderful life. We hadn't missed a meal on a holiday because Marcia always feed us. We go to breakfast because Chuck and Karen always bring us out to eat breakfast. So it's wonderful. So I can tell you now, because remember I told you when we first got married, the answer would have been no. But I can truly tell you now, when I ask the question, is this what I signed up for? I can truly tell you that the answer to that question is yes. So as I come to a close, I just want us to ask the question and be honest with the answer. Is this what I signed up for? And if the answer is yes, we must roll up our sleeves, do His will, even if the things that we seem to be going through is bad. We must be able to say, not my will, but thy will be done. Remember, honest dialogue between you and God is necessary to move past the fear and into the light of God. So I got one more story for you, and then we can wrap this up. So yesterday, I came here to help out with the turkey dinner. And I can really tell you, I asked myself this very same question yesterday. Is this what I signed up for? So we were in the kitchen, and me and Larry Bell was, I think, making coffee or getting ready to make coffee. And Sandy Carmen came in, and she was talking to Lynn. And Sandy told Lynn that Jaretta had a seizure, and she had fallen and hit her head, and she was in the emergency room at BMC. And So I was thinking, okay, well, Pastor Sheila is in Dayton, Ohio, so I can pray, but I don't know what else I can do. So they was both looking at me, and they say, like, you got to do something. So I'm thinking, well, I could go to the hospital, but I really don't think they're going to let me go back there and see or find out. You know, after all, I'm not the pastor, I'm just the husband of the pastor. So, but they had this look on their face like they wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I'm asking myself this question: is this what I signed up for, driving to BMC? So I get to BMC Hospital emergency room, and they got a bunch of people in there. The place is busy. Everybody who's been in the emergency room knows it's busy, but just there was this one young woman sitting behind the desk. And so I went up to the young woman and I asked her, I told her the situation. And I told her why I was there. I told her that our pastor was in Dayton, Ohio, and that I was married to the pastor, and that we had a congregant that had been brought in, and that her family was really worried about her, and if I could go back and see her. So the young woman looked at me, and she had this look on her face like, you know, I've heard some stories, but nobody would make that up, so maybe I should look into this. So I talked to her some more. She asked me some questions. So then I had to run out and get on the phone and call and ask what Jaretta's last name, because I always knew her first name was Jaretta. I never knew her last name. So this woman saying, so you're asking me to go see somebody you don't even know her last name? Right? So I called, and Sandy and them told me her last name was Maggery. So I go back into the emergency room. I tell a young woman so she said, okay. So she looked up the records. She said, well, I'll call back and somebody will come and get you in a little bit. So have a seat over here, Nelson. Well, you know how that is. When they tell you to have a seat in the emergency room, it's like, okay, well, it'd be like a couple of hours. So I'll just be patient. But then they wasn't moving fast enough, so the young woman at BMC got up from behind the desk and she came. She said, Nelson, I will take you back. And so we went back there. I prayed with Jaretta and I prayed with her husband. And all the time I'm asking myself, this is not what I signed up for. I'm not the pastor of First Baptist Church, and so therefore, you know, but God made a way because it was God's will that I be in the place that I was in. It was God's will. Pastor Sheila always tell me about how she lived a sermon. I'm thinking, how you going to live a sermon? But yesterday I actually lived this sermon. Is this what I signed up for? Because God had put everything in place. I was able to go back there and pray with Jaretta and pray with her husband and talk to him. But guess what, First Baptist Church? God gave us a miracle. Because by the time the turkey dinner was over, Jaretta was awake and they let her go home. So I know that it wasn't my will, it wasn't my prayers, it wasn't anything that I did. It was the will of God who wanted her to get up. And so I can tell you now, answer the question, but you have to be honest with yourself when you ask and answer the question. Is this what I signed up for? If everybody in First Baptist Church says, yes, this is what I signed up for, it would not be impossible to fill the pews in First Baptist Church. You won't be ashamed to invite people to First Baptist Church. You won't be ashamed to invite your family and friends when we do the cupola dedication, because I expect that for each and every one of you to invite at least 3 people to the cupola dedication. You won't be ashamed, and you can easily say, not my will, but thy will be done. And we all can move into the wonderful light of God. So may God add a blessing to this sermon, and I hope it was inspiration for you all to know that we simply have to say yes, and we have to be willing to give our will to God's will.